about that, guys. I'm learning how to make buttons.
And apparently we're live.
Aha! You always sneak that in.
I have to
Always,
wait for
guys.
somebody to notice. All right, guys. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching, everybody at home. I gotta pause my other screen there because it always comes on, starts to play. Welcome to the Daytripper Photo Show. This is episode number 198.
Woohoo!
198.
Yay.
Did we ever think we'd get to 200? Blake, you were with us, right, almost from the beginning. Did you ever think we would do 200 episodes?
I knew you would.
That's pretty cool. You had your own show. Whatever happened to your show? By the way, everybody, this is Blake Zimmerman. Hello, Blake. How are you?
Hey, everybody. Yeah, I'm somewhere in here.
So, like, what happened with your show? Is that ever going to come back?
I do not know. I was looking at. I used to talk a little show similar to this, talking about geek stuff, comics, movies, games, anything we really felt like, anime and shooting the conventions and stuff. Unfortunately, it got to the point where no one was just kind of fell apart. People got busy, couldn't put in, and you know, one day when they started up and everyone's last minute going, "I can't make it." I was like,
Very frustrating. I'm blessed. I'm very blessed to have some guys like Phil and Michael, and in the past, Gabriel, Navi, and everybody who came on the show and they were regular. It's hard to do a show like this. People don't quite realize.
yeah, just a little. Especially making it consistent, being there every single week, and you have to find a date that everyone can make it there, and it's a little hectic.
Yeah, no, I've been very lucky. And speaking of lucky, I'm going to talk about who's right beside me having a beverage. Phil, good day. How are you?
Hi there. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fan-fibby. So you were, a little late getting to the show tonight, just a little bit. I mean, you were doing something. You were occupied, and yeah, I know. It's a nice segue. Trust me, it's a segue.
Okay. Segue to something.
No, it's going somewhere. I personally just got a gift from somebody.
Oh, exciting.
It was a very cool gift from our friend Veronique, who watches the show and has been on day trips. And she brought me this paper, which is the coolest paper I've ever known. Let me see if I can get this thing to focus here. Here we go.
There we go.
So this is, paper with the moose on the front, because I love moose, right? And it's nice, thick paper. But what's funny about this paper is...
It's poo-poo paper.
It's poo-poo paper.
Take the ooh out of poo.
So anyway, I thought that was kind of funny. I'd start the show with my new poo-poo. It's actually made from moose poo.
Okay.
That's been cleaned up. Yeah, because it doesn't have any smell. Pretty good. And it's pretty neat. Moose poo paper.
Nice.
You gotta have it.
Brian touches poo.
I touch poo
It
regularly.
makes sense that you'd be able to do that because they eat mainly like fiber, right? Trees and bark and that kind of thing.
Roughage.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Isn't it cool? And it's neat because if you look at the back of the paper, you can really see all the trees and fiber that it eats.
Mhm.
Anyway, interesting.
Welcome, everyone, to our Tips and Techniques show, where we have a technical discussion about poo.
And speaking of which, Michael, good day to you. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm excellent. You sound much better this week.
Yes, I got a fancy new upgrade. I finally got a new microphone.
Upgrade. That's very cool. Well, congratulations. You sound great. And nice black background. You were a floating head earlier. And now you've
Yeah,
You've
I've
attached
some
it.
lightened the mood a bit.
you've lightened the mood.
I'm quite dramatic.
It's got to do like the spin around on your chair. It's
Yes, that'd be cool.
James Bond reveal.
And I have to give you a little bit of thank you right now because Michael, of course, comes on. He asked the question, how do you guys feel about, what was it, eggnog, coffee, and Kahlua?
Yeah.
Apparently you've got a beverage there. So, of course, Shelly just came
I'm
home.
not drinking on the job.
No, it's all right. Shelly just came home a few minutes ago from Costco, and she picked up the world's best eggnog. So
Nice.
you made me go down and get a little bit. So nothing in it, just eggnog, but that's fine. All right, so we've started the show. We've got a few people who are watching. Christine says, good evening, gentlemen. Hello to you.
Good evening.
Jason says, hi, guys. Nice to see you, Blake. Jason Marlett says that to you, Blake. Ivan Foster says, hi, y'all. Hello to you, Ivan. Christine says, anyone acknowledge the Charlie Brown Christmas tree? Christine always loves Phil's backgrounds.
I do. I thought I'd get festive, so I have it set up here.
Yes, and Ivan noticed that as well. Very cool. Lovely. It's either the Christmas tree or the Nintendo shooter that people seem to notice the most.
Sadly, I have a new chair, and you can't see the bottom of my wall of mystery anymore.
That's okay.
But maybe I can get this chair up higher, and then we can see the top of my wall of mystery. But now you can't see me.
Now the whole show, everybody here is just going to sit and watch your background for the rest of the show.
Have you gotten yourself a Nintendo Classic yet?
No, not yet. I have a non-classic downstairs that it's actually still in working condition, but it does have the issue of only having like 3 cartridges. So one that had 30 built in would be very useful.
Mm-hmm.
The good old days of very straightforward basic gaming.
Yes.
Now I get a new game. It takes me a week to learn how to use it. Then I get sick of it and never play it again.
Or sometimes they just don't work for you, which I still need to figure out for you. Hopefully by Friday.
Yes. We'll talk about that. Okay, so this week's show is a tips and techniques show, and we're going to talk about contrast. And contrast is a funny thing. You know, it could be a lot of different things. It could be bright and dark. It can be different color. It can be tonal, dynamic range. It could be all kinds of different things. So we're going to talk a lot about that tonight, and that's, again, why I've asked Blake to come on, because Blake actually had a good quote that he made to me earlier today. He texted me. He says, contrast is what makes a photo work, gives it that pop, quote unquote. That was you, Blake. So I invited Blake to come on the show because, I mean, we all know Blake knows his stuff, and he's great to talk to, and it'll be nice to have his feedback on the show tonight. So that's cool. Thanks for coming on, Blake. I know you weren't feeling the best, so.
Yeah, I'm trying to remedy that right now.
There you go. Again, self-medicating. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so before we get into the conversation, I just want to quickly remind everybody who's watching to please join the Daytripper community on Google+. That's where we really do everything. If there's any kind of event that we run, if there's any kind of free photo opportunity that we know about, that we hear about through the grapevine, I always funnel that through the community. Anytime you want to submit a photo for a photo challenge, which, by the way, currently is something very cool, and that is You Better Watch Out. I mentioned it on the show last week, but my audio kicked out during that part.
Okay.
So I had people texting me like, what's the photo challenge? So You Better Watch Out. That's the challenge. It'd be very interesting to see what people do with that. And just that's where we do everything, is in the Daytripper community. So if you're interested, check out Daytripper Photo on Google+. That's where we hold our private community in there. We keep it private. That way we can kind of weed out the loons. You know what I mean? Because it happens. I mean, there's...
How am I still here?
Yeah, right. There's a lot of time in this industry, in photography, where we get ego and we get attitude, and I don't click well with that. I just don't. So if I ever come across a situation where there's that big, bold type A personality that it's all about me, I kind of shut off a little bit. And I think that has helped the Daytripper photo community be a very open place where people don't have to worry about sharing their photos. If they're not super excited about their photo and they just want some help, a lot of people feel very self-conscious. So I think we've created a pretty good environment where people can feel confident and comfortable doing that. It's not about I'm better than you are. It's about how can we all bring each other up. And that's what we do over there in the community. So please check that out. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, click that little like button that's just under there somewhere. Let everybody know that you actually enjoyed our show. We have a great time doing it, and hopefully you guys have an equally good time watching. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're trying to build up to 1,000 subscribers. Got a ways to go. Just a ways. We're around 300. So
we'll get there.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Hopefully we do. I mean, that opens up all kinds of new opportunities for us on YouTube. That gives us the ability to do smaller, real classes that we can actually put out there as a subscriber base for specific people. We can control and moderate that a lot more, which is really exciting. So I'd love for more folks to subscribe to our channel. And also, if you are watching live, talk to us. Right on the YouTube channel, right beside us. You can just say whatever you want. There's people who have already been commenting to us. Actually, speaking of which, Jessica Vieira says hello. Hello to you. Christine also says, Michael, I haven't seen your February class on the Daytripper website yet. Is that still happening? Yes.
Yes, it is. Sorry, I was waiting for you to jump in because the schedule's been moving around a lot, and we're still working out what's going on for 2017. I believe what's going on at the moment is my class is actually going to be in March instead of February.
Let's see here. Let's check it out.
I think we agreed on March, and
Yes.
Phil might actually be in February.
I think I am.
That's exactly right. So Phil is actually going to be doing a lot of Lightroom stuff in February. He's going to be doing catalogs and how to do workflow and all of that in a part one. We're actually splitting this up. It's going to be called the Daytripper Darkroom. And the Daytripper Darkroom will be 2 editing classes a month with a part 1 and a part 2. So it's easy to get the bite-sized information that people are looking for and still get a lot of good info. So part 1 for Phil's is going to be catalogs, how-to, and workflow. And part 2 is going to be the basic and advanced editing modules in Lightroom. So that'll be awesome, Phil. Thank you for doing that.
Oh, you're welcome. I think it'll be fun.
Oh, it will be. It's going to be awesome because in the following months, I've got Navi doing something, which is going to be cool. In March, that's when Michael will be doing. I'm excited for this one because you're going to be splitting it up into a way where you're showing how to shoot for composites and how to do all that, and then you're also going to be doing how to edit the composites. So it's like a head to toe type of deal. So that's
we're
really
going to cover both sides of composite editing. It's going to be a more basic approach, ground roots, exactly how to start everything and see it through on both sides. So I believe what we were looking at was March 11th is going to be how to shoot a composite.
Mm-hmm.
And March 25th will be editing the photos that, hopefully, the photos that we took at the previous session.
That's awesome. Very cool. And then in April is when we're going to be doing some intro to Photoshop and 10 features you should know about Photoshop. And it's May, actually, where Navi is going to rule the month. I'm actually super excited about this. You all know Navi Noom. She's been on our show as a host, and she's just an overall awesome talent. She's going to be doing Lightroom 1 and 2, but it's all going to be based around portraiture and wedding editing and how to get that look. So that's something that I don't think a lot of people like to teach because people are very protective of their look. And Navi's look is awesome. Mm-hmm. And she is one of the coolest people on earth. So she's going to share that knowledge out to the world. And even better than that, on the Saturdays, she's doing that, the 13th and the 27th. But on the Sundays, she's doing a 2-part portrait class. So there's going to be editing and shooting portraits in the same month, all done by Navi, which is super cool. So that's in May. But yeah, for now, February is the Phil month. March is the Michael month. And we will
I'm there too.
Blake, you want a month, Blake?
No, I got my 1 day in March.
Yes, you do. That's right. Yeah, the 12th of March. That's the crossbody wrestling session. We're going to do a low light action session with Blake and shoot wrestling and get into the art and storytelling that's involved. That's the cool thing I love about Blake is he's really addressed the storytelling aspect of photography. And the photo that you shared this morning, I said, I always love a post from Blake, especially when someone has their foot in their face. Quickly, just kind of go over that before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show.
Yeah, well, go over which, the shot or going over what we're talking, the session?
The session, just what we're going to be doing and how that shot related.
So I'll bring the shot up because you guys will probably get a nice little kick out of it.
I see what you did there.
So this is what I shot from one of the wrestling events we had up in Barrie last year. I was trying to talk about one. I use my strobes to solve the issue of the low light in this area. The lighting is very yellow. It's a gymnasium high, like the lighting is very similar to a high school gymnasium. It's very crappy, to be honest. One way you can get around to it, bring your own lighting. Mm-hmm. But what this allowed me to do was freeze a frame where a guy's in midair, literally looking like he's giving him a karate kick to the face. And it just reminded me of how tough these guys are and how good they are at not being able to. For example, if you did that full speed and you caught someone like that, you're probably going to break his neck, if not at least his jaw. And they do an amazing job of making it look real. Yes, there is impact. Yes, this is stunt work. stunt work we see in movies, they get multiple takes. They can do it over and over and over again. These guys get one shot, and they do an amazing job of hitting 99% of the time.
Mhm.
And they tell a story through their entire battle. You watch a movie and you see the hero starts off strong, and he starts struggling, and then he has to make the big comeback at the end. He may or may not win. Wrestling follows the same formula. He usually has a good guy starting off really strong. They get put down, and they have to fight their way back up. It's a battle. It's a story. And
the real good ones tell a story better than any kind of soap opera that you'll ever watch.
Yeah.
And to be able to capture that in a single frame is a challenge.
It is completely a challenge, and this one is just one of those. You're not sure who's a good guy or a bad guy, but you know someone's getting beat on right now, and it's like, I just love the dynamic of it. Him flying through the air like that, and he's like, ow.
Totally agree. And the cool thing about it is, this is the guy here.
Yes.
That is doing the kicking, and imagine actually getting kicked by this guy. Right? I mean, that's not a fun thing. So to do it, and as Blake was saying, to not actually injure the guy because you got to wrestle him tomorrow night, that's the skill. I love it. I absolutely love it. And I love that Blake shoots it with me. Blake does, and Sean Johnston does. And also this coming December 3rd, if anybody's interested, they have their big wrestling up in Barrie again, and everybody is welcome to come to this. I mean, how much does it cost, Blake? Like $15-20?
I think it's 20 if you want front row and 15 otherwise.
So for almost nothing, you can do a family fun evening. And this is family entertainment. This isn't, violence for the sake of violence. They're telling a story. And it's a lot of fun. And actually, our friend Michelle will be coming to that one as well. So it'll be a full house, that's for sure. But it'll be fun. So before we get any further out of our discussion for our tips and techniques, I just want to remind people to check out the sponsorship that we have. We've got some great companies that help us a lot with this show, and we're kind of sporting, at least Michael and I are. Phil's not rocking the do,
but that's okay.
But we've got the Sennheiser stuff going on. So thank you, Sennheiser, for helping us out with the show. Of course, to LensPen for all that you have done for our show and for every single day trip that we run. Cotton Carrier, I love your holsters. I'll always wear them. Thank you very much. There's another post going out. Everybody's so different with what straps they like. Don't you notice?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody has their own strap system. Blake, you used to use the Spider. Are you still using Spider?
I have. Well, Mike always laughs at me because I now have the Spider hand strap back on. I use my Spider belt clip, and I got the Black Rapid shoulder strap back on it. So they're all for different reasons. If I'm walking around carrying it, the Spider belt is by far the best I've used, especially if you have a flash on your camera, because it points the flash
sideways.
Downward. It doesn't go to the side; it goes downward.
Yeah.
The hand strap. So I needed something on there for when I'm usually found climbing something or other, and having the hand strap where I didn't need to have it hang around my neck or around my shoulder or whatever came in very handy. But there's been certain points where I just wanted something additional, so I got the shoulder strap traded out with Nickel. So
everyone's different, and this post was basically saying, this person preferred the thin little straps. I used to have a Think Tank strap. It was very, very thin, had little grippies on it. Used to wrap it around my wrist, and then I realized I can get a hand strap, so I stopped using it. So anyway, yeah, Cotton Carrier has been a huge help to us, and of course to Sigma Gentech Distribution for letting us use Sigma lenses on all our day trips. Awesome stuff, and it gives our clients just a completely different experience on a day trip. So thank you very much to our sponsors, and can't wait to talk to you guys about our 2017 season, which is going to be awesome. Can't believe I just did that. Anyway, sometimes I do things and I'm like, why did I just
It's only recorded, Brian. It's okay.
I know. It's only going to be watched by people. Anyway, so just a reminder, chat to us. Let us know that you're watching our show. Let us know if you have a question. We're going to be talking about something that can technically be a little difficult to comprehend sometimes, but if you get it, it can really help your photos, and asking questions during the show is really going to make a big difference. So please do. All right, let's get into this, guys. Let's talk about some stuff. I think to understand where we're going with this conversation, I'm going to read the definition. I always start there. Whenever I want to learn something new, the first thing I do is I look it up in a dictionary and try and find out, where does this come from? What does all this really mean? Contrast is the difference in luminance or color that makes an object or its representation in an image or display distinguishable. In visual perception of the real world, contrast is determined by the difference in the color and brightness of an object and other objects within the same field of view. So basically, something that looks different than everything else. Right? Blake, what do you think? You're smiling.
Oh, sorry, I just saw a message coming from Michelle.
Oh, fine. Nothing to do with the show. It's okay. Hi, Michelle.
It has everything to do with the show. Everyone's bickering in the chat now.
Oh, is that right?
I'm starting conversation.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, you keep doing that. Actually, Blake, that'd be really cool if you were to monitor that. And if anybody says anything, just kind of roll it into our conversation, because I know Michael's really good at doing that. And yeah. Okay, so what?
And as for the contrast thing, basically, from what your definition was saying, yeah, it's whatever can create that focal point for us, pretty much. And there's certain ways that you can do that you have certain ones. Because of Lightroom and Photoshop, we always think of contrast being the exposure. That's not the only way of doing it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. In fact, on our last show, Michael was talking about his favorite color is
electric indigo.
Electric indigo, and that's all about contrast. So why don't we start off with you talking about that color and how that represents contrast?
All right, electric indigo is a really interesting color because it deals with, I believe, something called simultaneous contrast, which simultaneous contrast is used in a lot of ways and has different effects based on where it's used. But what it really is it just defines the characteristics of color in relation to other colors, other things near it. And what's interesting about it is used in illusions all the time. Simultaneous contrast, a certain color will look completely different and sort of behave differently in our eyes based on what's next to it. So if I do a quick screen share here, if I can find the button.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Got it.
So I'm going to show you first. Here's electric indigo. This is my favorite color. And what's interesting about it is, vibrantly, color-wise speaking, it is right between red and blue with our eyes. And now one eye sees a little bit more red, another side sees a little bit more blue. And this color seems to be right on that edge between the two, that it has this weird optical quality to it that if you look at this, I don't know how it's going to show through on the stream, so if you look this color up on Google and really take a good look at it, what you'll notice that's interesting about this is it has this energetic quality. It sort of vibrates against itself. Now, another way of showing that sort of optical vibration is looking at this. Now, all of these colors are very, very vibrant next to completely desaturated gray, and it's the same shade of gray in each box, but it's really, really noticeable with the red. It's super subtle with the green. But if you look at the red, it has this super vibrant quality to the red compared to how subtle it is on the gray, and that edge seems to almost argue in our vision. It has this shock factor to it, that edge is vibrating because of that difference in how these colors next to each other are affecting each other. Similarly, when you're looking at colors like this, these colors are very, very similar, the ones that are used in the middle. But look at how they seem to change. This is a weird one to work with because these are actually a little bit different. But if you were to take these colors and put them against their opposites, then the color itself seems to feel a little differently. Let me try a different one. Here, I was looking at all of these.
Actually, what's kind of interesting is if you look in the one in the upper right-hand corner, the orangey red colors almost look identical between, like when you're looking at the colors with the green and the blue around it, they almost look the same. You go down to the one below, it's like the purples, it looks reversed. The one looks lighter than, but you see the true colors underneath, right? It's like, these are really messing my eyes up because things are looking wrong.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so it's this interesting quality to it of the actual, even if these colors were the same, they would feel different because of what's around it.
Yeah.
But these ones are actually different, but because of that characteristic of what it's next to, it feels closer together. It feels like these are actually the same hue. If you were to ignore the fact that these are actually different down here, they look almost identical. This feels much darker than the green, even though if I were to make these black and white, they're almost imperceivable in difference. They're almost the same shade of gray if this were a black and white photo.
How would you use this concept in photography, though? Like, this is just a couple colors and looking how they bounce off each other, and they give you a funky contrast. But how do you use this concept to make a better photo?
Now, here is the fun part, and I use this all the time, is considering exactly this thing. If you were to look at shades of gray and take this color like the one in the very bottom right, these melt together. These in a black and white image are almost indistinguishable from each other, but look at how huge that difference is in contrast just from the color. And the benefit of this, especially in this case, is the fact that these are opposites, that the purple and green are so opposite each other on the spectrum, the orange and blue are so opposite. If I were to use this in a photograph, let me pull up one of these. Here's the before shot. This is the shot just overcast. I took this today with the lovely model that I met, Jade, who may actually be watching tonight.
Cool.
And what I did was I processed the white balance separately for the background compared to the subject. And a really good advantage of using the white balance is that the Kelvin, the color temperature, is blue and yellow, which is opposites, and the tint is green and magenta, which are both opposites. So one thing that's really nice to consider, especially if you're shooting a portrait where having magenta and yellow in the pigment of the skin is warm and really attractive for a portrait, if you were to process the background colder and the subject warmer, you get a really, really nice color contrast. It still looks pretty realistic, but it really pops because you've got this magenta next to the green, you've got the yellow next to the blue. So that warm and cold contrast next to each other adds that level of vibrance to the photo, and that's all that's changing is this little amount here. Let me make this bigger and make sure everyone can see it well. And you can really see this from a starting point. And again, if this were black and white, here it is. If this were black and white, look at how similar the shades of gray are in her face to the background. Aside from the dark hair framing her, there's almost no contrast in this image. But looking at all of these afterwards, again, we have that exact same situation where the shades of gray are identical. But because of that color contrast being brought in, that simultaneous contrast, that it really adds that extra layer of vibrance and warmth. And she looks more alive compared to that cold background. So it's a really, really cool feature.
Neat. So, I mean, this is color contrast, which is one of the tools that we can use to guide the viewer's eye. Blake, what do you have up there?
This is a similar situation pulled from doing my cancer charity concert before. And this is actually something I picked up from Josh Clifford, Ron Clifford's son. He was helping me earlier this year shooting a karaoke competition. He mentioned watching the lights. It's kind of funny, though, because he shoots a lot of times in black and white. And when you're looking at the tones, like Michael was saying, there's not much difference in the tones going through here. It's, everything's fairly similar. But going back to color, can you take a guess of where my focal point is, right? yeah, the color just, because of the contrast, the blue and the red, just like boop, he just jumps off compared to what we had before.
For sure.
And that's one of the things that I've picked up using in wrestling, working in the concerts and the stuff like that, is you watch for the different colors of lights coming around, and sometimes you can, if you get, especially if you're watching the lights and you pick up on the patterns, you'll see when they're changing, and when you'll be like, okay, now actually I have contrast here. Black and white's not going to look, you're not going to get much out of it, but if you're shooting in color, you can create a very moody, awesome photo out of it in some very difficult lighting situations. So.
Good points. Also, I've noticed that I've made some shots like the sunrise in Algonquin Park where the sun isn't quite coming up yet, and it looks very flat from top to bottom. And by just adding a different tone of color, you can make it pop in a different way. So I was working on one of the images from one of our Algonquin trips back in, I think, 2014, and I was bouncing around and I was trying so many different things to like the picture. And, you know, they say if you have to spend too long on a photo, it's probably not a good photo. So I was just about ready to give up on this thing, and it wasn't working for me. And yeah, finally I just started playing around with all these different filters, and I tried the duotone filter, and I flipped it. The gold was supposed to be on top and the bluish tones were supposed to be on the bottom. And I figured, well, there was just a hint of that goldish color coming from the sunrise. So I used that for the entire bottom, and I used the blue for the entire top, and it popped for me. So that's that color contrast. And this is one of those experiences that I've had where it made a big difference. I don't mind the photo now. So it made a big difference. Phil, have you ever had any situations with color contrast like that? Like, I mean, we all see selective color. We all love that.
Well, that depends. Depends how it's done.
Yeah. Any other points that you can make, to experiences that you've had where that color contrast really helped out?
To be fair, missing a bunch of the conversation. I don't know what's already been said, so I don't want to repeat anything.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Leave that for this time. If I come up with anything, I'll mention it as we go.
Do it. Sounds perfect. So we all know that the eye is drawn to contrast, whether it's color or luminance or anything. We've talked about color, but even just bright and dark. Do you guys ever utilize the light in a photo just to kind of create a path for the viewer to go down?
Well, it's normal that our eye is usually drawn to the light as part of an image. And so if we're using that to help bring our eye through the image, through to our subject, or even if we're trying to make our picture less distracting and draw more to our subject, it is important to keep an eye out for, you know, where that light is going to be, where the brightest part in the picture is going to be.
There's been a lot of situations when I was in the Arcanum with Don Komarechka. I took a picture of in the tunnel, and he started coming in this tunnel with this flashlight. And I thought the photo was awesome because it was this long tunnel and there was this big burst of light at the back end. And Don was like, well, yeah, but draw a path to it. Actually get in there and, you know, brighten this part of the ground and darken that part of the ground and actually create a path in that light that draws you to that point. I was like, you know, I never even thought about doing stuff like that before. Blake, you were at least very active in the Arcanum. Are you still working in that?
Yeah, I'm still there. I just been taking my time because I'm very picky in the way that I picked a goal with the Arcanum on what I wanted to accomplish, and I shoot a lot, and not everything fits into that goal. So if it's not fitting towards that goal, it just, you know, I use it, I post it for other stuff. It goes towards my website, does other stuff, but it just takes me a long time to find stuff that goes towards my learning goal there.
Right. But you're also working with one of the masters in the Arcanum, Ron Clifford.
Yeah.
In your day-to-day life, because he's a friend of yours now. Yeah. And like, he is one of those people as well that really uses light to guide the eye.
He is, yes.
Have you picked up anything that you'd like to share from that? Where do I begin?
Yeah, a lot of, like, it's kind of interesting because a lot of the stuff we've been working on has been more working with the posture, the posing, and interaction with people, keeping the flow going. Not so much in the way of light painting and things like that, because that would be something I'd actually get more of if I was doing his landscapes, like if I was in the Arcanum for landscapes with him, because he actually has a sphere specifically for landscapes, but I've been so much into portraiture in the last little while be it moving, like crazy guys moving and doing flips, or if it's, you know, cosplayers or models posing and stuff like that. So I haven't had much of a chance of doing the light painting. I do remember when we did, I went up for his flower workshop last year, and it was interesting because he's actually using speed lights on like these tiny little flowers, and he is lighting them with like 4 or 5 different lights. And these things are like this big, and he's lighting them in different spots and highlighting different areas. And he would create that path with using for your eye on very small subjects. And I'm just like, that is insane. That's a lot of light and a lot of work, but the photos were fantastic right out of camera. You're like, damn.
So cool. Well, I mean, the word photography means drawing with light. That's the definition of the word. I say it a million times, but it's true. I mean, literally the definition, photography, drawing with light. If you see it that way, everything you shoot, every photo you make should have some sort of thought involved in leading the viewer's eye. I mentioned before color contrast, and I also mentioned luminance. There's tonal contrast and color contrast are two of the big things to talk about. Color contrast is what Michael was talking about earlier, where you have colors playing against each other and really creating this dynamic that you can't get otherwise. But tonal contrast is the difference in tones from the lightest tone to the darkest tone. So in other words, it's the difference in tones from white to gray to black. And utilizing that tonal contrast, you're able to, as we've been talking, you know, create a path in a photo. I find now, even with my wrestling photos, when I'm doing my editing, I'm using a gradient filter across the bottom and a gradient filter across the top, and creating just a thin area of that photo that has more light, and then really, you know, narrowing down where I want that viewer to look. And a before and an after of one of these photos is like, can't even probably pull one up to show it. I wasn't planning for it, but you know, just one of the guys would wear Del Bruno, if you know what I'm talking about. Like, he wears basically a soccer outfit when he comes out, and it's blue and white, and his shorts are bright, bright, bright white. And anytime he's in a photo, if he's not the main subject you're trying to show in the image, everybody's eye goes straight to that blue and white contrast. And you have to dull him down to make anybody else in a photo with him be more noticeable. So I find his shots are the most challenging when I get to edit, because I don't know, do you know what I'm talking about, Blake, with Del Bruno's outfit?
I do know with some of the other guys that I've run into where you're trying to find that way to make someone else be the focus. Pereira's is another one where he wears, if he's wearing his yellow or his black or his red outfits, and he just sticks out. You know, I'm trying to, if it's a triple threat and he's standing off in the corner, you're like, oh, come on. The referees are really bad for that, because black and white striped shirts. You're sitting there and you're like, I want the focus to be on here. And so many times I'm cropping the ref out because I want them out of the photo. Other times I'm leaving them in because their expressions are hilarious when you look into what's happening in the ring. You know, a guy's getting slammed on the ground and you see the ref, he's like, oh my God, you know, he's cringing and stuff like that. Or they're like, oh my God, like massive expressions on their face.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you want them there, and other times you just want to be like, get over the, just, I need you out of my frame. Just go.
It's funny.
They're going to be a pain.
It's really funny you mentioned that as an example, though, because one of the photos that I use in my Brangle presentation is literally you're talking about focus in this case, where the referee is, you know, the one that my focus locked on, where really I didn't want him in that photo. I didn't want that photo locked on him. I wanted it locked on one of the wrestlers. But because there was so much more contrast in the white and black shirt of a referee, the focus caught that and it zipped back, and it turned out okay. That's the one where Paul London got his head stomped on. Yeah, he was unconscious for a little bit. But having focus actually in the back on the wrestler takes your eye away from dude getting his head stomped on. Instead, you're looking at a referee going, ooh, like this, and you're getting the emotion in the story without having to look at the painful guy getting knocked out cold, which I think is better for me because I'm just so sensitive. But yeah, those are great examples. Excellent stuff. I was trying to pull up my wrestling to find this Del Bruno thing so I can talk about that with a little bit more of a visual, but It just takes too long to find anything these days, don't you think?
You need to
I think
find
so.
the best ways to get through.
Yeah, too many. Okay, so let's just get back to the notes here. Color, dynamic range, black and white, made photos, landscapes. Now, using this for landscape, this contrast thing when you're shooting landscapes or waterfalls. Phil, you do a lot of instructing for the Henry's Learning Lab.
I do.
And also for college. I mean, we were talking about earlier your portrait thing that you were working on. You shared a photo of your buddy, everybody's buddy, Martin. And you said that you were using flash to come in from the side. Now, you were trying to create that contrast, I assume.
Yes. A little bit of brightness, blended to the street, that kind of thing.
Yeah. How does that work out for you? Like, what was your mindset going into something like that?
Well, normally I'd go in a lot more creative than I went in with this. I would put more of a plan together. But generally, I want to have the shot look like the lighting is proper and look like it's realistic lighting, but have my subject lit in a way that you know that they are fully the subject, not just because they're what's in focus, but because they have all the detail, all of the, the proper lighting, proper detail on the face, and enough light in the eyes to, make them stand out from the shot, to give them that feeling of life. Excuse me.
Are you okay? You're all flushed.
Yeah, I don't know. It's all
Too
good.
Too hot down there.
Well, actually, the opposite. This room, I realized on the weekend when it was super windy that the entire seal around the window, where it's like stuck into the wall, that leaks quite a bit. So it's actually normally a little chilly.
Ooh.
But my nose is a little stuffed up, and that's, I think, throwing a couple things off.
Ah,
Yeah.
sorry, Phil.
That's all good.
You look cute with your rosy cheeks. All right. Well, I actually found the shot I was looking for here, so I'm going to do a quick
Perfect.
screen share and talk about the difference in contrast between this big, bright blue uniform. So this is Alessandro Del Bruno, comes out with this whistle blowing and soccer balls. He's just amazing. This wrestler just kicks people in the head from behind them. It's crazy. Anyway, when I was going through these images, there was a lot of shots that were, with an outfit like that, you can only imagine. Very, very bright, very, very, very contrast, especially when you get into something like this here, where he's the center of the shot. Now let's see if I can show a before here, because this one here, I think I tweaked a little bit. Yeah, I did. Okay, so the before shot, the trunks are just blaring white.
Mm-hmm.
And like Blake was talking about, it's all orange in the background, and I do a color balance with my flash. But when I edited the shot, I dulled down the pants and I brightened up the wrestler in the background, tried to blend the color so it was a little bit more accurate. So it's not just about Del Bruno's butt, but you can actually see the guy beside him as well. So, and then of course, I was still sick of the contrast of the blue. So I ended up flipping this into black and white. And now the wrestler behind is even more noticeable. And I don't know. It's just, I go through this process when I'm going through these images. What do I want to see? What don't I want to see? Honestly, I don't want to see his butt in the first place. So shooting from this angle, it's more about Jackson Jarvis on the ground than it is about Del Bruno. So if I can darken up Del Bruno and brighten up the person in the back, your eye is going to be looking at that a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my mindset going into this. Now, Blake, you have a completely different mindset when you shoot your wrestling. You're not just looking at the big picture. I'm trying to document everything to show these wrestlers the moves, but you're looking closer and more refined.
I wouldn't really say more refined. I try and pick my spots a little bit more. My camera cannot do a bunch of shots in a row. So like the 800, it's like, hey, I get 4 frames per second. Yay. So, and my files are large, so I have to pick and choose when I'm.
Yeah, that's a good point. See, this is funny. That's actually where getting a certain camera changes how you shoot.
Completely. So a lot of my shots, I was noticing that working with the flash on the camera, and I tried different things. I'd work with a snoot. I would try working without it. I would, off camera times where I'm holding it off to the side, I'm just popping it off so I have an angle at least on my flash. But that got really heavy holding the camera in the flash while you're running around a wrestling ring. So late last year, early this year, I started bringing my strobes with me, setting up in different spots to see what worked really well. And I found out it really changes where I can shoot from, because you can take a shot from a certain angle and it comes out flat. Big blast of light, and it just washes away all the detail on the guys. Their muscles don't look nearly as chiseled and stuff. You go off to a certain side and you pick out, and you realize all of a sudden you have, like, especially if you're doing clamshell, you have a dynamic look to them if they're in the right direction. Because there's so many times where it's like, aha, and they turn the last moment. You're like, I hate you.
Or old school walks in the way.
Old school always is in my way.
Old school is one of the referees of wrestling up in Barrie and many other places. He's retired teacher, so we call him old school for a reason.
Fair enough.
But he's awesome.
He is a lot of fun. But to give you an idea, like I try and catch the high dynamic motion moments, the ones that are kind of give me an idea of what's happening and give you that bit more impact as to instead of trying to catch everything. I'm looking for things like this where poor Von Vertigo is fighting a monkey. The guy on the bottom here is Space Monkey, doing a monkey flip. And I happen to catch him mid-air. Like, you can see the big arch in the back flying through the air, and you're just like, oh, that's not going to be a pleasant landing. Like,
no.
So I look for these kind of moments where it's just like, okay, there's something, like, you can see the impact about to happen, or in the case of the foot on the face, the impact just happened. You try and catch these really dynamic, crazy moments where they're flipping around and doing crazy things. Like I said, depending on where I am, my lighting completely changes.
Yeah, and depending on where I am, when I'm taking pictures and your flash goes off, my photos completely change. Sometimes it helps, and sometimes not so much. But it's funny, though, because the last photo that you showed, the referee walked into the frame.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to shoot that and still get the photo you're looking for. And one thing you mentioned, though, was it contrasts. It's not just about the color, though. I mean, you mentioned motion.
Yes. Actually, I have a good example of that right over here.
Oh, yeah.
When we talk about things like this, is the card the brightest point in the photo? No. Is it the highest point of contrast? Well, we have really bright lights right beside, and you have a lot of black going in here. But really, it's sharp. It's we can see everything else moving. This car is the thing that's going to draw your eye. That, and it has a
cabinet.
Back. This is taken by another friend of mine, Gary Monroe. He does a lot of painting. He also does a lot of traveling during the summer, and he has some fantastic landscapes. If you don't follow him on Google+, check him out.
And he's just a really cool guy, too.
Yeah, he's hilarious. Yeah. Don't tell him I said that. But yeah, it's when we're talking motion, Brian, you also do a lot of them with your zoom blurs and stuff like that, where you can tell what the point of focus is. And it's not because of the lighting, it's not because of the colors, it's the motions bring you into what your focal point is. In reality, the car is not moving moving very little compared to the lens, because the lens is panning with it. Everything else is flying by, though, going the other direction, which creates that blur and everything else, and that's where we get a lot of motion versus stillness kind of feel to it.
Mm-hmm. Michael, was that you that added this in the notes? So color contrast isn't just tonal or color, motion, and sharpness?
No, that was me.
That was you. Okay, cool. And there's your panning and blur. Cool. Soft photo except for subject who is super sharp. Editing to fix. What do you mean by all that?
The last part wasn't mine, but this is a photo by our friend Lena, who's been on the show. If you look at this one, our exposure contrast, the white flowers and the black shirt. The tonal, we have, I guess, almost the shirt and the background, actually, kind of, because you get that saturation versus desaturation kind of feel to it. But where her eyes go, it goes to her face, and that's not due to any of the ones really that is mentioned before. It's her face is sharp as any, like, just beautifully sharp. Everything else has a nice soft focus to it.
Mm-hmm.
That can help draw your eye, because it's the one thing that it's a contrast of what sticks out.
And this is why portrait photographers get so frustrated when they can't get focus where they want it.
Mhm.
Michael, you were going through some photos earlier, and you were just getting so angry. I thought you were going to throw something.
Oh yeah,
So what's the deal?
it's mostly actually Photoshop drives me crazy trying to use.
Okay, now your audio has just gone to pooper.
Don't say that.
I know, right? He's like,
Check
a
the
new
connection.
microphone.
Tell me I'm good. Tell me I'm good.
You're not good.
No.
I'm not
All
sure if it might be bandwidth issue or something like that.
That could be it too.
That's probably what it is.
a little.
Let's just go with that because that panic in your face right now is really like, oh my god, I just got this
Here,
microphone.
let me do this last minute fix.
All right.
Watch if I do this.
Now, Phil, the portrait class that you teach, you're pretty quiet now, Michael. Do you talk about using contrast in portraiture?
Which portrait class?
The one for Durham.
So it's more Lightroom.
Oh,
than
okay.
anything. So I do add some stuff in there, but it's not based on that. So it's more on what to do after the fact. So going in and taking a look at contrast and going in and taking a look at, are there other parts of the picture that are, drawing your eye away from where they should be and how we can fix that afterwards. That is a big part.
Yeah, for sure. Even in our chat here, I believe it was Christine. She says, it seems a lot of contrast can be manipulated in post. Yes. And Michael, you answered absolutely in many ways. Maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit.
I'm sorry, I'm distracted trying to figure out what's wrong with this.
It
Well, you
sounds
sound
better
fine.
now.
I'm good now?
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. You
Okay.
sounded fine the whole time. Just joking. It was crackly, but it's fine.
Not helping with this. I just noticed Christine's comment that she's cracking up at my expressions. Having funny faces.
Contrasting expression.
All right, so what's going on? What I miss?
Oh, no, we're just basically saying for edit. What was that, Blake?
We're ending. That's
Yeah, nice, everybody. So for editing, how do you work with contrast?
For my own photos?
Yeah.
Um,
Do you consciously think to yourself while you're doing your editing, I've got to put the contrast where I want my eye and do things? Like, this is something I've recently started doing, and that's mostly since working with Don. But I think it's really helped my photos focus on something.
Yeah. Funny enough, with my own workflow, I put a lot of focus into different types of contrast. I'm always looking at the tonal contrast and color contrast in an image, and I use those in different ways when I'm editing. And I talk about this with people that I'm teaching, that I edit a black and white photo with color, and I edit a color photo in black and white, because I take advantage of color contrast and tonal contrast being used in different ways, which is a much more complicated topic to get into. But one of the things that I almost never touch when I'm editing is the contrast slider. It's actually the last thing I use. I don't really bother with it. I approach contrast using curves when I'm editing, or levels, or individual dodging and burning. But when I shoot normally, I always shoot in black and white, because like I was talking about with color contrast earlier, having the same shades of gray, but the color separates them. I like luminance contrast in a photo more for telling a story, for having that energy. And I like that dark and dramatic look to a photo where the light is sort of emerging from the darkness. So I really, really use luminance contrast as much as possible.
Nice.
So
I like the way you think like that, though.
when I shoot in black and white, it's still saving in color. I'm still shooting raw, but I view everything in black and white. And when I'm looking at a scene, I try to imagine what the grayscale version of that scene would be. And it really, really helps to see everything. When you look at everything in black and white, you really get to see that contrast of exactly, you look at the brightest and the most contrast areas, you see where your eye is going to go and how dramatic a scene is if it were black and white. And it adds a different element to your image to take that approach to it.
I want to go over what you just said there. You shoot in black and white, but your images are saved in color. So you're shooting in RAW,
Yes.
and you have your camera color setting to black and white. So what you see on your screen is the JPEG.
Yeah.
And that's how you visualize your image. It's just the JPEG, embedded JPEG. Do you shoot RAW plus JPEG, or do you only save the colored RAW?
I only shoot in RAW. I've been tempted to try shooting RAW and JPEG and using the JPEG for other reasons, but it's not something I do. I only ever shoot in RAW, but I always preview the photos in black and white.
That is a really interesting way to shoot. Have you ever thought of that, Phil?
No, I haven't. But that's a different way of doing it, because when you look at a black and white picture and you look at it as black and white, you're paying attention to where the detail is, to the highlights, to the shadows, and not really getting distracted by the kind of the fluff of the color. And then once you decide you like it and you have your idea for it, adding that color in is simply just adding another way of viewing, another way of kind of looking at what you want to do. I like it. That seems like a good idea. I actually try it out next time I go shooting some landscapes.
I think me as well. That's a really neat way to visualize your stuff.
So I'm enjoying this now, because when I did this I started doing this actually before I got to college, but I continued this habit all through college, and other students would see my screen, see that I was shooting black and white. And every time they asked me why I was doing that, they immediately switched and started doing it. And every time I see some of those people shooting, they've got black and white set on their camera screens all the time. And I thought that was really fun.
I wonder how many people are going to do that as well. Very cool stuff. All right. Well, anything else to add on the topic of contrast, guys? Phil?
No, I think we covered a lot of things.
Actually,
I think so.
Kind of wanted to sneak something in here about
Do it.
when I was talking about simultaneous contrast being able to make a photo pop. It's actually able to save a photo as well. And I want to give you guys an example here, if I can screen share, of a photo that can really normally, especially before I learned this trick, I would have only ever done this in black and white because it's just awful. And it's a sort of lighting situation you might run into where white balance will not save the day. And I'll show you guys what I'm talking about here is actually with usually fluorescent lights. Really confuses the white balance and really does not do any justice for skin tones. It's got this pale yellow green going on in the image. And if I adjust the white balance here, I can try to warm it up, add some magenta to it, and try to make the skin tone a little more realistic. I can move it around here. But what this does too is totally warms up the background, and these leaves in the background are now yellow. I can darken it a bit, but it doesn't feel as real. Whereas if I were to do this one over here, I've warmed it up, I've darkened it a touch on the face, but now I've got this magenta, this yellow coming into the skin tone that brings it back more to something realistic that you'd see in real life. And I'm still able to bring that vibrant green into the background. And doing that, I think, has a really huge influence on being able to save a shot, where this just, like, no matter what direction you go with it on its own, it doesn't quite feel right because that color of the light source itself is really, really wonky. So if I bring that back to just normal, it's got that pale sort of sickly look to it. It does no justice compared to what
you're basically going through and modifying different sections of the photo separately.
Yeah. And this is really handy too if you actually find yourself in a situation with multiple types of light sources. Like in a street scene, if you're outside at night, there's going to be some incandescent bulbs, there's going to be some fluorescent lights, and the types of light, that white balance of those lights are going to compete with each other. This is especially apparent when you're using a flash and have something like sunlight in the background or fluorescent lights. The color of those lights are really, really contrasted against each other. So it helps to know that you can sort of make local adjustments in the photo and adjust the white balance separately depending on what parts of the image you're looking at to bring everything together in a way that you want it to look like. So there's a benefit to seeing the reality of a subject sometimes, but sometimes we want to see it, how we interpret it looks a little better.
Absolutely. Good points. Awesome stuff. Okay, I want to quickly share the photo that I found, and then we're going to start saying our good nights. But I was talking about the wrestling and the moment where I felt sick.
Oh,
Yeah. So this is where the contrast of the referee's uniform, I was on continuous focus here, and the contrast detection lost focus on the wrestlers and zipped back and focused on the referee. And I'm perfectly okay with that because, yeah, getting your head stomped on isn't always as fun as it sounds. And the guy who's on the bottom there, Paul London, was knocked out for about 10 seconds. But were you at this one, Blake?
No, I'm. Wait, was this?
This was Ring of Honor. Yeah, you weren't at this one. So where you were is the Carrot Fest where Paul London and Brian Kendrick were wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And I went up to Paul London. I showed him this photo, and he said, "Oh my God, I can't believe that." He says he wrestled 10 minutes after this and doesn't remember a thing. He was totally loopy. So, yeah.
I know a few stories about guys going through that, including Mick Foley.
Oh yes. What? When he jumped off the?
Went through the cell the second time, and if anyone watches wrestling, Mick Foley is one of the guys who did the crazy high falls. He was constantly being brutalized, and he's known as a hardcore legend for a reason. On one of them, we went through the top of a 15-foot high steel cage, unplanned, into the ring, which was his second fall off the top of that. And at that point, he already had this separated shoulder, ended up getting front tooth up through the top of his mouth and out through his nose. And he doesn't remember wrestling the rest of the match. But at some point, he ended up going under the ring, pulling out a bag of thumbtacks. He ended up getting slammed on the thumbtacks on top of all that. So his opponent, of course, after all this, runs to the hospital right after him. Undertaker shows up, and Mick just turns to him and was like, "Did I remember the thumbtacks?"
Nice. Yeah,
Doesn't remember a 20-minute fight at all. And he had to ask him, "It's like, did I remember the thumbtacks?" He's like, "Mick, you still have them in you."
Yes. There he is with thumbtacks on his back and in his hair and his own tooth in his nose.
Yes.
Yeah. Wrestling is fake, people.
Yeah, completely. No one gets hurt ever.
No, ever. No. Anyway, squirrel. But it's fun. I mean, we're talking about contrast, and there's a contrast right there. Mick Foley outside the ring and in the ring.
Yeah.
Outside the ring, he's smart, intelligent, funny, witty. He's a comedian. He's
best-selling author.
I mean, he's a smart dude.
On top of that.
Yeah. Inside the ring, he's the hardcore legend. So crazy. Yeah. Anyway, let's get to our quote of the day. Let's first remind everybody, though, the photo challenge is you better watch out. So we're watching out for your photos submitted for the photo challenge. You see what I did there, Phil? Like that?
I do. I like it.
Thanks, buddy. The quote for today is, what a distressing contrast there is between the radiant intelligence of the child and the feeble mentality of the average adult. I love that. That's Sigmund Freud, by the way. Distressing contrast there is between the radiant intelligence of a child and the feeble mentality of the average adult. I get it because I am that average adult and I'm quite feeble. So when I was a kid, I thought I was super smart, but oh well, things change. Anyway, Sigmund Freud, what a distressing contrast there is. All right, guys, anything else you'd like to add? Anything you've got going on that you want to talk about, Phil? Any little nuggets, any tidbits? You got your new business cards, I saw?
I do. Actually, I got new ones. They had a weird run in them, so I called the company that printed them. They printed more of them and got them to me faster than them originally shipping to me, which was already fast. So that was great. So they're fun, not fun. They're finished. They're good, and that's nice.
Cool. So when you first started on our show, sorry, Michael, when you first started on our show, you had big news that you were going to tell us every week. Is this working toward that yet? Are we ever going to
have a website? It just has nothing on it right now because it's down for maintenance. It's down for upgrades. I think I have it down for upgrades.
Well, Michael and I were talking earlier today, and I'm going to be revamping the Daytripper website with new instructors up there. So I'll give you a page.
Yay!
How about that? And then
I'll also get my lower third working at some point because it just no longer functions in Firefox. So I need to switch over and start using Chrome for this.
Took me forever to get mine working again. Finally, it is. There it is.
Yeah, I click on it and opens up a separate page that then gives me an error.
Oh, not cool. Michael, how about you, bud?
Nope. All I can
Nothing?
say is I'm really curious to see these business cards, actually. I need to finally design new ones for mine because mine are too hard to read. The font came out too small and not very white.
Well, I have some on my Instagram, so you can check that out. At Phil Nye the Photo Guy.
It's true. Actually,
It's
so
actually
you.
my Instagram.
That's so you. That's so appropriate. Actually, appropriate in context, that's the problem with my business cards is not enough contrast.
you just totally made me laugh. Jim Nye, the science guy, is a wrestler that we shoot. And it just so happens that there was this big, huge wrestling event in Toronto this past week. And Jim was there. His real name is Jeff. And first of all, that's him right here, by the way. I searched Jim Nye, the science guy. And
I think that he's good.
yeah, there's my photo of him,
That's
actually.
awesome.
So that was kind of funny. But yeah, he was just the meme of, when, I don't know if everybody's watched the Survivor Series at wrestling and Brock Lesnar versus Goldberg and this big, huge battle. And spoiler alert, change the channel if you don't want to know the thing, spoiler alert. Goldberg beat Brock Lesnar in about a minute and a half. And Brock is supposed to be the biggest, baddest thing. So, of course, our buddy Jeff, Jim Nye, the science guy, is in the crowd. And the first thing you see as soon as Goldberg wins is Jeff going, "Oh, my God!" And now everybody's putting memes about Jeff out there. So, funny little tidbits. I know. Blake, you're laughing at that.
Yep, I am.
Did you see that? Were you watching? Did you see him?
I didn't see him. I saw the Barry Wrestling shirts, people posting that. As Barry Wrestling up as a promotion we shoot every month, and people from Barry were in the crowd at Survivor Series, and they're wearing their Barry Wrestling shirts.
Yes.
Seeing the post from Carter Mason, one of the wrestlers up there, taking his mom took him to his first wrestling show, and she was not impressed with it, but she became like the biggest fan. She's like, he's like, she pulled the soccer mom thing, becoming the biggest fan of the sport and of him doing this because it's such a passion for his. And they went on their first wrestling date going to see Survivor Series. I'm like,
Oh, right on.
Dang. So there's a whole bunch of people talking about it and stuff. I'm like, this is, yeah, but seeing so many things going on, and Toronto always has something unusual happen in it.
So true. So true. All right, guys. So that's pretty much it for us tonight. Thank you, everybody on the panel. Blake, thanks for sitting with us tonight.
My pleasure.
It's very fun having you back. Michael, as always, thanks for being here, my friend.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And, of course, Phil Nye, the science guy. Awesome seeing you here tonight. Do you work tomorrow?
You. Nope, I'm teaching at Durham all day.
All right, so I'll see you Friday.
So
probably.
I guess technically I do, but that's a different story.
At a different place. Okay, guys, thank you all so much for watching. And if anybody has any questions for us, please feel free to keep on posting and keep on joining the Daytripper photo community on Google Plus, and keep in touch with us and let us know what you're going through. Let us know if you have any questions, if you need any inspiration, if you need some help. Tag one of us in your post if you have a specific question for any of us, and you'll always be able to get that reply right away. So thank you all so much. I'll see you all next week. Oh, and by the way, next week's show is our banter show, like we never banter on any other show. And it's on new gear for Christmas.
Ooh, exciting.
Fun stuff. We get to talk about toys.
Yeah, possibly about things that aren't yet, but that's okay.
What do you mean by that?
Well, there's that one thing that I really am interested in, but I'll save it for next week.
All right, perfect. So if anybody has any questions about what to get for their photography loved ones for Christmas, check out our show on November 30th, show number 199. Wow, 199, that's pretty cool. And then, of course, show number 200 is our photo review show for the photo challenge, which is Better Watch Out.
Yes.
That's right. So that'll be a lot of fun, and I'm hoping to have a surprise guest on that show as well. We'll see how that goes. I can't say who it is. If I told you, I'd have to kill you. But it could be fun, so stay tuned. See you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.